Hello guys, Nat Blue here, and today we are going to be continuing talking about the new Unearthed Arcana for D&D 2024. The first video we talked about the first 4 subclasses, so if you haven't watched that video, I do recommend going to watch that video. I like to get this information from YouTube videos. I think it's easier to digest in video format. So I thought, you know what, why not make one? So we are going to go through the second half, which is going to be the Phantom Rogue, Shadow Sorcerer, Hexblade Patron Warlock, and Undead Patron Warlock. These are all returning subclasses. So if you have played prior editions of D&D, these were in the books. We touched on the 2 new subclasses in the Unearthed Arcana last video. So like I said, recommend checking that out. So we are going to kick this off with the Phantom Rogue. Some rogues shepherd opponents to the grave and slip through the world as undetectable as a spirit. These rogues are valued for their effectiveness at gathering information and spying. So some updates from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So Wells from the Grave now links its number of uses to the rogue's dexterity modifier. Tokens of the Departed now provide soul trinkets whenever you finish a long rest, allowing more reliable usage of the feature's benefits. Voice of Death is a new feature that allows you to cast Speak with Dead, and Death's Friend now lets you grant a soul trinket when you roll initiative, lets you gain a soul trinket when you roll initiative and have no soul trinkets. At level 3, you get Wells from the Grave. So right after you deal a sneak attack damage to a creature on your turn, you can target a second creature that you can see within 30 feet of the first creature. You roll half the number of sneak attack dice for your level, you round this up, and the second creature takes necrotic damage equal to that total, as Wails of the Dead momentarily sound around you. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your dex modifier, and regain all expended uses after a long rest. So pretty solid. Just giving extra damage, pretty much, which is always great. Also at level 3, you get Whispers of the Dead. So when you finish a short or long rest, you can choose one skill or tool proficiency that you lack and gain it. You pretty much get the knowledge from the spirits around you, and you lose this proficiency when you use the benefit again to choose a different proficiency. So pretty solid. At level 9, you get Tokens of the Departed. This is the spirits of the dead are drawn to you, and echoes magically manifest as strange curios with resonant power. So when you finish a long rest, you can gain 2 soul trinkets. These are tiny objects. There is a trinkets form, or there's a trinkets table in the player's handbook that you can look at. They last until you finish another long rest, at which point they disintegrate. If you ever move more than 30 feet away from a trinket, it immediately teleports to you, appearing somewhere in your person, on your person. So you can't just lose the trinket, which is great. The number of trinkets you gain when you finish a long rest increases when you reach level 13 and 17 for the rogue. 3 trinkets at 13, 4 trinkets at 17. So you can use the soul trinkets in a few different ways. You can use them as Death's Kneel. So when you deal sneak attack damage on your turn, you can expend 1 soul trinket and immediately use Wells from the Grave without expending a use of that feature. The trinket is destroyed. Life Essence, while you have at least 1 soul trinket, you have advantage on death saving throws and constitution saving throws. And Spirit Query, you can take a magic action to expend 1 soul trinket and immediately cast the Augury spell, requiring no spell components and using dexterity as the spell casting modifier. That trinket is destroyed. So to regain soul trinkets, when a creature you can see within 30 feet of you dies, you can take a reaction to regain a soul trinket. So that's pretty solid too. Level 9, you get Voice of Death. You can cast Speak with Dead once without a spell slot, requiring no spell components, and using Dexterity as the modifier. You regain this ability once you finish a short or long rest. So pretty solid. Speak with Dead, I haven't seen used in a lot of my campaigns, but I'm sure if you're doing a campaign with a lot of, opportunities for it, or if you're just a player that loves the spell because it is a pretty solid spell, this would be a good ability. At level 13, you get Ghost Walk. So as a bonus action, you can assume a spectral form, gaining the benefits below for 10 minutes or until you end them. No action required. You can't use this again until you finish a long rest, unless you expend and destroy one of your soul trinkets from tokens of the departed to restore your use of it. So the options, or the abilities that you get: Flight, you gain a fly speed of 10 feet and you can hover. Hazy form, attack rolls have disadvantage against you. And then incorporeal movement, you can move through difficult, or you can move through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain. If you end your turn in such a space, you take 1d10 force damage. So you can just move through a square that already has somebody inside of it. At level 17, you get Death's Friend. So you become so close with death that you gain the following benefits: Death's Lament, which is when you use Wells from the grave, you can deal the necrotic damage to both the first and second creature. And Draw of Death, when you roll initiative, you regain one soul trinket for your tokens of the departed if you have none remaining. Both solid. Honestly, a free soul trinket, always a good thing to have with this subclass. And then dealing necrotic damage to 2 enemies is certainly better than dealing necrotic damage to 1. I don't know if I love it as a level 17 ability. That's kind of a high level to get those, but overall, I think it sounds interesting. Now, my opinion on the Phantom Rogue. I don't think it sounds bad. I like a few things here. I do like the soul trinkets. I think that's a really cool feature. I do really like Ghost Walk. Like I said, Voice of Death. I'm sorry. The Speak with Dead spell that you get a free use of could be very useful, especially to some players or in some campaigns. And then, Ghost Walk is great with the flight, hazy form, and incorporeal movement. I'm not a huge rogue fan, though. So I think I probably wouldn't play this class, but it is certainly interesting. I could see why people would want to. And then next we have the Shadow Sorcerer. So your magic comes from the Shadowfell. It might be that your lineage traces back to an entity from the Shadowfell, or perhaps you were exposed to the realm's dark energy. You can control darkness, undeath, and well with your shadowy magic. So I've been curious about the Shadow Sorcerer, and I'm happy to see that it is getting an update with these classes. So some updates from when it was in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Eyes of the Dark now also grants you blind sight and the ability to see through darkness of any spell you cast. So that's great. I like the darkness spell, but it can be limited by not being able to see through darkness. Shadow Spells is a new feature that provides a list of always prepared spells, like every spellcaster in the 2024 edition. Spirits of Ill Omen, formerly Hound of Ill Omen, now uses the Summon Undead spell, allowing for more versatility and scaling, so that's nice. Umbral Form now gives you one free use of the form per long rest. Strength of the Grave has been improved and moved to the benefits of this form. So at level 3, you get Eyes of the Dark. You have Dark Vision with a range of 120 feet and Blind Sight with a range of 10 feet. That is incredible. 120 feet is so far for Dark Vision, and Blind Sight is just incredibly good in the first place. In addition, if you cast a spell that creates an area of darkness, you can see normally through that spell's darkness. So like I said, the darkness spell is great, but you can't see through it. So this adds a little bit to that makes the spell a little bit better. At level 3, you also get some shadow spells. So you get always prepared spells. At level 3, you get Bane, Darkness, Inflict Wounds, and Pass Without Trace. I think those are all great. Darkness with the Eyes of the Dark ability is incredible. Pass Without Trace is such a good spell, especially at low levels. And then Bane and Inflict Wounds are just solid spells all around. At level 5, you get Hunger of Hadar and Summon Undead. Both great spells. I hope I said Hadar correctly. It might be Hadar. At level 7, you get Greater Invisibility and Phantasmal Killer. Invisibility spells are always useful. Phantasmal Killer, I thought is a really good spell, but I haven't necessarily used it myself. And then at level 9, you get Contagion and Creation, both really good spells. At level 6, you get Spirits of Ill Omen, so you can cast Summon Undead without a material component. You can also cast it once without a spell slot, and you regain the ability to cast it this way when you finish a long rest. Whenever you start casting the spell, you can modify it so it doesn't require concentration. If you do that, the spell's duration becomes 1 minute for that casting, and the spell ends early if you cast it again. Taking away the requirement for concentration is always great because that gives you a little bit of flexibility with other spells you can use while that spell is active. The worst thing about concentration is wanting to cast more than one concentration spell. At level 14, you get Shadow Walk, so when you're in dim light or darkness, you can take a bonus action to teleport up to 120 feet to an unoccupied space you can see that is also in dim light or darkness. I think this one's great, especially paired with Eyes of the Dark. So you cast darkness into a crowd or over your enemies, at least. And then you can take that bonus action on either this turn or the next turn to teleport 120 feet into the darkness, which is so good because the enemies aren't going to be able to see you. And the enemies outside of the darkness aren't going to be able to see you either. So I think that's a really good ability. I love Shadow Walk. I do think level 14's a little bit high to pretty much get a really good Misty Step. Like level 14 is high enough to where I don't think a lot of people are going to make it up there. And it is a really cool ability that a lot of people are going to miss out on. At level 18, you get Umbral Form. So as a bonus action, you can adapt a shadowy form, gaining the benefits for 1 minute until you have the incapacitated condition, or until you end the reaction, or until you end the form without a reaction required. Once you use that feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, unless you spend 6 sorcery points, also not requiring an action to restore your use of it. So you get the following benefits. Incorporeal movement. You can move through occupied spaces as if they were difficult terrain. If you move through an occupied space and end your turn there, you take 1d10 force damage. Shadow resilience. So you have resilience to all damage except force and radiant. That is so good. Force damage is a very unlikely resisted damage type, and radiant damage, I think, with the theming of this, makes a lot of sense. It's literally the light putting out the darkness. And then you also get Strength of the Grave. If you drop to 0 HP and not die outright, you can make a Charisma saving throw, DC 5, plus half the damage taken, so it could be a decent amount. If you succeed, your HP instead changes to a number equal to 3 times your Sorcerer level. So overall, really good level 18 ability. I like Umbral Form. I think it's great. Then we have the Hexblade Patron Warlock. This is a warlock that has made a pact with a sentient magic weapon. This could be a weapon that is sheathed at your side, or a magic weapon that is stored elsewhere and asking you to carry out its whims. These are the main updates from Xanathar's Guide to Everything. The Hexblade spells now give you a list of always prepared spells. So same thing, the spells have been revised from Xanathar's, but is the same thing the other spellcasters have, where you have a prepared spell list. Hexblade Manifest is a new feature allowing you to cast Hex a number of times without a spell slot. It also grants you a handful of unique ways to interact with your cost target. Life Stealer is a new feature that interacts with the Hex spell to provide healing and reliable damage. Armor of Hexes now more reliably reduces damage taken, and Masterful Hex is a new feature that boosts the power of Hexblade Manifest. So the spells for Hexblade Patron Warlock are the following. At level 3, you get Arcane Vigor, Hex, Magic Weapon, Shield, and Wrathful Smite. Those are all so good. Obviously, you need Hex for this class. This is a class that kind of heavily relies on Hex. Magic Weapon is such a good spell just because it changes the action economy a little bit. Shield is really good, especially at lower levels, because your Warlock is not going to have a high AC. So I think this is always nice to have. And then Wrathful Smite, I mean, it's a smite, and you're a Warlock that has a sword or an axe or something along those lines. At level 5, you get Conjure Barrage, and Dispel Magic. Dispel Magic is one of my favorite spells in the game. I think it's incredible. It's really useful outside of combat and can be useful inside of combat, depending on how creative you are and what your DM allows. At level 7, you get Freedom of Movement and Staggering Smite. That's another smite there. Smites are always nice. Freedom of Movement is really good, especially if you get captured or grappled or anything along those lines. At level 9, you get Animate Objects and Steel Wind Strike. Steel Wind Strike is such a solid spell. So I don't know if this changed from 2024, but the first thing that pulled up when I typed this in, you flourish the weapon used in the casting and then vanish to strike like the wind. Choose up to 5 creatures you can see within range. Make a melee spell attack against each creature. On a hit, a target takes 6d10 force damage. You can then teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 5 feet of one of the targets you hit or missed. So incredibly good. It lets you hit up to 5 creatures, does a lot of damage. 6d10 is an average of like 30 points of damage. And it allows you to teleport 5 feet away from a target, which can get you out of the combat a little bit. It is 5th level, which, I mean, you get it at Warlock level 9. That makes sense. So, your patron at level 3 grants you the ability to summon cursed echoes of its blade to hinder your foes. You get the following benefits. Hexblade's Curse. You can cast Hex without expending a spell slot a number of times equal to your Charisma modifier. And you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. When you cast Hex, a spectral weapon resembling your patron orbits the cursed target. That's really cool thematically. I like the idea of, oh, you hexed your target's cursed, but this tells you how it's cursed. A lot of the time it's just like, oh, it's cursed. Hexblade's maneuvers. Once per turn, when you hit a target cursed by your hex with an attack roll, you can cast one of the additional effects. Raining Slash. The target makes a con save against your spell save. On a failed save, the target can't make opportunity attacks and its speed is halved until the start of its next turn. Harrowing Blade. The target makes a wisdom save against your spell save. On a failed save, the next time the target makes an attack roll against a creature other than you before the start of your next turn, the target takes necrotic damage equal to your charisma modifier. And then Stymieing Mark, the target has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes before the start of your next turn. I think these all sound great. Like it should be, the Hexblade Patron Warlock is heavily reliant on charisma modifier. So you should be putting your charisma higher anyways while playing any Warlock, because that's going to increase your spell save DC and increase the amount of damage you can do. But it also allows you to do more stuff with this class. So like Harrowing Blade, target takes necrotic damage equal to your charisma modifier. So you want that charisma modifier to be pretty high. Okay, level 6. You get Life Stealer. Your patron allows you to drain vitality from the things you cost, granting you the following benefits. Hungering Hex. Whenever the target cost by you drops to 0 HP, you regain HP equal to 1d8 plus your charisma modifier. Inevitable Blade. Once per turn, if you make an attack roll against the target caused by your hex and miss, you can deal necrotic damage to that creature equal to your charisma modifier. So once again, really important to have a high charisma modifier, but also good abilities. I kind of like that. Level 10, you get Armor of Hexes. When you take damage from the caused target of your hex, you can take a reaction to reduce the damage taken by an amount equal to 2d8 plus your charisma modifier. That's a decent amount. You can use that feature a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So if you have a high charisma modifier, once again, this is going to be great because that's a lot of uses of this ability. And I mean, it being a reaction is really good too. So level 14, you get Masterful Hex. Your patrons' cost might flows even more strongly through you, granting you more benefits. You get a cost critical. Any attack roll you make against the target caused by your hex scores a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20 on the d20. So a little bit of an easier critical hit. Infectious hex. When you use one of your Hexblade's maneuvers, you can target one additional creature within 30 feet of the cost target. The additional target takes 1d6 necrotic damage. For a level 14 ability, I don't like that. 1d6 is such a small amount. Like, make it a little bit higher than that, in my opinion. And then Resilient Hex, taking damage, can't break your concentration on Hex. That's incredibly good. That's really good. Concentration can make or break this class since it relies so heavily on the Hex spell. To round us out, we have the Undead Patron Warlock. So you have made a pact with a powerful undead, be it a lich, a vampire, or another entity entirely. These patrons know the paths of ambition and the routes past the door of death. They share this knowledge, along with other secrets they have learned in their immortality, with those who walk their will among the living. So this was in Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft initially. I love Von Richten's. It's one of my favorite 5 ebooks. And obviously, you get an expended spell list. Undead spells is what they have it called. Grave Touched now allows your spells and attacks to ignore resistance to necrotic damage. That's always great. Necrotic Husk no longer requires a reaction to use its secondary feature, and it restores you to a number of hit points equal to 10 times your charisma modifier. Really good. Superior Your Dead is a new feature that improves your form of dread, allowing you to fly, regain hit points, and improve spellcasting. So, at level 3, you get Form of Dread. As a bonus action, you can transform into an avatar of your patron's dreadful power, gaining the following benefits for 1 minute until you have the incapacitated condition or until you end the form with no action required. You can transform a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So you get Facsimile of Life, you gain temporary HP equal to 1d10 plus your Warlock level, and Frightful Avatar. You have immunity to the Frightened condition, which is always great to have. Additionally, once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can force it to make a Wisdom saving throw against your DC. On a failed save, the target has the Frightened condition until the end of your next turn. So that's really nice too. Level 3, you get your Undead spells. So the spells that you're going to get here are Blindness, Deafness, False Life, Phantasmal Force, and Way of Sickness at level 3. At level 5, you get Speak with Dead and Vampiric Touch. At level 7, you get Death Ward and Phantasmal Killer. At level 9, you get Anti-Life Shell and Cloud Kill. I think they're all pretty on theme with the subclass, and they're all solid spells. Nothing to complain about there. At level 6, you get Grave Touched. Your patron's powers have a profound effect on your body and magic, granting you more benefits. So Arcane Necrosis. Whenever you cast a spell or hit a creature with an attack roll and deal necrotic damage, this damage ignores resistance to that necrotic damage. Additionally, once per turn, when you cast a spell that deals damage, while using your form of dread, you can change that spell's damage type to necrotic. I love this. So, any spell or hit on a creature with an attack roll ignores necrotic damage. And then you can change a spell to do necrotic damage. So, what you should do if you have an enemy that is ignoring the damage type of your spell, so it has resistance to fire damage or something, change that to necrotic damage using that once per turn ability, which is insane. Once per turn might be too much. And just ignore the resistances. Even if they're resistant to necrotic damage, it doesn't matter because of how the ability was previously explained. So I think that might be a little bit too strong. With the ability to do it once per turn, maybe like once a day or once per number based on your charisma modifier. A number of times equal to your charisma modifier is how that is normally worded. I apologize for that. I think that would be better. I think, honestly, a number of times equal to your charisma modifier would be the best because then it's not as restrictive as once per long rest, but it's also not as open as once per turn, which is a crazy amount. And then you also get Undead Endurance. You don't gain exhaustion levels from dehydration, malnutrition, or suffocation. In addition, you don't need to sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. I think that's great. Most DMs are not tracking dehydration, malnutrition, or suffocation. Okay, that's not true. Most DMs are not tracking dehydration and malnutrition. I hope most are tracking suffocation. Not being able to be put to sleep by magic is also really good. Although at level 6, I don't think it's as likely to happen. Because most sleep spells, from my understanding, are based on a number of HP. I understand warlocks don't have a lot of hit points, but at level 6, I think they would probably have enough to negate most sleep spells already. I could be wrong there. I'm not going to look into it either. So at level 10, you also get Necrotic Husk. So you gain more benefits. Necrotic Resilience, you have resistance to necrotic damage. When you're using your form of dread, you have immunity to necrotic damage. So that's really good. And then Unholy Resuscitation. I blanked for a second. If you drop to 0 HP and don't die outright, you can cause your body to erupt with deathly energy. Every creature of your choice within a 30-foot emanation originating from you makes a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC, taking necrotic damage equal to 2d10 plus your Warlock level on a failure, or half as much damage on a success. Your hit points then change to 10 times your Charisma modifier, minimum of 10 hit points, and you gain 1 exhaustion level. This is so good. You can't use this ability again until you finish a short or long rest. So I want to take a second to talk about what I like about this. 30-foot emanation, pretty decent area, which is great. Each creature of your choice means you don't have to hit your party members. Taking necrotic damage equal to 2d10 plus your Warlock level on a failure, or half as much on a success is really good. Because 2d10 is an average of 10 damage. you're already at level 10 to do this. So that is an average of 20 damage on a failure and an average of 10 damage on a success, which is still a decent amount. And then your hit points changing to 10 times your charisma modifier is also really good. Because let's say you have +6 in charisma because you are at level 10. So it wouldn't be impossible. But you know what? Let's go a little bit more likely. Let's do like +4. You just have to. I mean, that would put you at 40 hit points. That's a decent amount for a sorcerer. So, or a warlock. I'm so sorry, a warlock. It's been a long day. And then at level 14, you get Superior Dread. Your form of dread improves and grants you a few more benefits. You have a fly speed equal to your speed and can hover. Your speed, I'm assuming, is walking speed, which is really good because that's a fly speed of probably at least 30 feet. I think certainly at least 30 feet. I don't think the smaller creatures have reduced walking speeds in this rendition. Profane casting, when you cast a warlock spell from the conjuration or necromancy school, you can cast it without any verbal, somatic, or material components, except material components that are consumed by the spell or that have a cost specified in that spell. Verbal and somatic makes this incredible. So, not having to use verbal components means that you are going to have an easier time sneakily doing this. And that goes the same for somatic components. But there's another great advantage to this. You can do this while you're subdued. Because if you think about it, a somatic component is specific hand gesture or movement that's required for the spell. A verbal component, obviously, is something you have to say when you're casting the spell. So let's say you're tied up, your mouth is covered, and you want to cast a spell at your enemies. We're at level 14. You know what? Let's say you want to cast like Cloud Kill, because it's part of the undead spell list. So it's going to be prepared. You can do it without saying anything, without moving your hands. You can just cast the spell. And that's incredibly good. I do like that they specified material components that are not consumed by the spell or don't have a cost specified in that spell. Because that could make this a little bit more powerful if you gave those, or if you didn't give those exceptions. And then you also get Vitality Siphoned. So once per turn, when you deal necrotic damage to a creature, you regain HP equal to your Charisma modifier. At level 14, I think this is okay. And normally I wouldn't think this is okay because that's not a lot of HP. Let's say level 14, you do have +6 or possibly even up to like +8 for your Charisma modifier. That means you regain like 6 or 8. But it says once per turn. That's really good. Once per turn makes this way better. Because that means you can just do anything that causes necrotic damage and then heal. And that's really good for a spellcasting class that might be a little squishier than the martial comrades. So, that is the Unearthed Arcana. That's all 4 of the remaining subclasses that we didn't cover in part 1. Like I said in the first video, I don't think I'm going to be able to playtest these. I haven't been playing a lot of D&D recently. My group is kind of going through some scheduling conflicts every week for the past like 2 months. So we aren't playing D&D right now. And then when we do return, I think we are transitioning for a moment to kids on bikes, which I'm super excited about. So I would love if you guys could leave in the comments if you get a chance to playtest these and what you think about them. Because I am incredibly curious about a few of these. I think Undead Warlock Patron sounds really fun. I would love to have a vampire patron. I'm a big vampire fan, you know? Or maybe, honestly, like a mummy patron would be really cool. Have like an Egyptian themed player character. And then I think that the um, some of the ones mentioned in the last video sound pretty interesting, but I'm not as big of a fan of the ones that we talked about here. Shadow Sorcerer could be fun. I do like the idea of teleporting into a shadow spell, or not shadow, darkness spell, into a darkness spell. But I think Hollow Warden Ranger is incredibly exciting from the last video. College of Spirits Bard is incredibly exciting. That's a class that I've been curious about, and it looks like to me they have made the class better. And then the Reanimator Artificer sounds fun. It's probably the first Artificer subclass that I have been excited about. I'm not a huge fan of Artificers. I like when other people play them, it doesn't sound as fun for me. So, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Please leave a comment if you get to try out any of these classes or if you have any initial thoughts on the subclasses. And other than that, guys, if you did like the video, you can like the video. It's free. YouTube is fine with it. If we're being completely honest, I'd love to see a like every so often. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I do want to try to cover more Unearthed Arcana. It's something that I enjoyed doing. And then when these classes eventually come out, I would love to take a moment to cover the full release because I think that would be a lot of fun. If you guys want to see these videos as they're released, hit the notification bell to be notified when the videos come out. Other than that, guys, I hope everybody is having an amazing day. And until next time, peace.